Good morning and welcome to Enniskillen Salvation Army and Worship Together. We are so grateful that you were able to join us. A little bit different this morning. In our in-person worship, we have visitors. We're being led by our divisional leaders, Colonel Neil and Chris Webb, and unfortunately we don't yet have the technology to live stream that meeting. So we have something for you, a special treat, particularly for those of you who love Salvation Army music. One of the two poet generals of the Salvation Army is General Albert Orsborn. He was the international leader of the Salvation Army in the 1950s and has penned many of the beautiful songs that we have in our Salvation Army songbook. A few months ago, earlier this year, Boscombe Salvation Army put on an evening, music for a summer evening, an evening with General Albert Orsborn, looking at some of his poetry and listening to the music composed around those words. And what made this particular event very special was they used recordings of General Orsborn talking about his songs to introduce each piece of music. And so this is our gift to you this morning, and we hope that you are blessed and you are brought closer to God by this wonderful music and the wonderful words associated with this music. But we will see you next week. We'll be back to normal for worship together, but be blessed and enjoy this time and have a good week.
I understand you want to know something about the origin of some of my songs. I cannot give you a great amount of detail in the short time at my disposal, but I will tell you that I commenced writing songs when I was 16 years old. I was then employed at the international headquarters as a junior clerk. I noticed one week in the war cry an announcement inviting writers to submit new words for open-air use to any well-known Salvation Army tune. I decided to enter. I wrote a song commencing with these words: "Ye who pass, or idly linger, every one the bidden guest of the King of our salvation, hear again your Lord's behest. Come, ye weary, come, and I will give you rest." Other verses followed in the same vein, and I sent in my entry. I waited for what seemed to a 16-year-old boy an interminable period, and then received notice from the war cry that I had been awarded the first prize. Now this was riches beyond the dreams of avarice. It was not given in the form of a coupon on our trade department to be redeemed in goods, but was actually £1 sterling. Later on I found, to my amazement, that the delay in awarding the prize had been occasioned by editorial doubts as to the originality of my submission, and they went through all the available hymn books and song books to try to find out whether there was a song beginning "Ye who pass, or idly linger." Failing to find one, they supposed that I must have written it, as indeed I had. After that, of course, I was encouraged, and I went on to sing other songs and write other songs until in the training college I did quite a lot in this direction. And then, going onto the field, I used to write a new song every week to be used in my Saturday night open-air meeting, and found that this attracted quite a good crowd. Coming to the training college, I was under the direction of the then Commissioner Mackay, who asked me to write words to secular melodies. This was something rather new for me, but I undertook to do so, and during the several years that I worked there in connection with the Central Holiness meetings at Clapton, where we had a crowd of about 3,000 every Thursday night, I wrote a song a week, totaling altogether about 250 numbers. Now, having given you that little bit of introduction, I shall proceed to say something about those numbers in the songbook. Number 42 is the first. I will take them in the order in which they are printed. Now this particular song, I Know Thee Who Thou Art, was written in a time of great sorrow. Why is it, I ask, that sometimes our songs must be born out of tragedy and suffering? Like the psalmist said, Thou givest me songs in the night. Well, I had suffered a severe bereavement, and I was plunged into deep sorrow. Now, sorrow can have a corroding effect. It twists the mind, it hardens the heart. But if, as in my case, by God's grace, I was able to submit my sorrow to the one we know as the King of Sorrows, the world's first authority on sorrow, the man who wore the crown of thorns which represented our sorrows, then indeed we can change our sorrows into song. And so it was in this instance. In the midst of suffering and walking the hard road of the valley of sorrow, I was able to look up and see the man who wore the crown of thorns for me. And thus I wrote, I know thee who thou art, and what thy healing name. This number was written at my home in South London. The first, the second, and the fourth verses were written in that order. And then I thought there should be another verse. So I inserted number 3. Beside thee as I walk, I will delight in thee. I am happy to say that this particular song has brought me many, many letters from all over the world, telling of people, especially in times of distress, finding comfort and strength in these words. Now take number 107. This was written in 1914. Let me see, I was not a captain, I bore the rank we then knew as ensign. That, of course, is obsolete. But the International Congress of 1914 was an event which stirred not only London, but the whole of the British Isles, and I believe had for the Salvation Army happy and useful repercussions in many parts of the world. And as I saw the delegates coming to London from the various countries of the world, until the whole of this metropolis seemed to be alive with Salvationists, I wrote these words: "Yet once again, by God's abundant mercy, we join our song of thankfulness and praise." What a wonderful event was that Congress. I, of course, had attended the earlier one in 1904, when I had the privilege to work in what we then called the Foreign Office, and when I saw the founder and other great leaders and heard them take part in the mighty assemblies. 1904. It seems a long, long while ago, but as a boy I watched and I listened and was immensely inspired by the vision of that international army in Congress in the City of London. We then had, as you may know, a temporary building seating many thousands of people on the site now occupied by Bush House, Strand, in the West End. This temporary building I saw in process of erection, and one day there the founder came to see how things were going on, but while he was there a summons came for him to attend to see the King at Buckingham Palace, the first real sign of royal recognition and approval of the Salvation Army, for Queen Victoria had been rather cool toward us. I saw the founder go out of the building and wash his hands in a builder's bucket before proceeding to see the King. This, I think, was a real turning point in Salvation Army history. And so when again in 1914 I saw the International Congress assembled, my heart was thrilled to the tune of the song 107 in our songbook. Now we pass to number 211. This was written after I had visited a meeting in the East End of London. It was in the winter of 1916. That, of course, was wartime. London, especially the East End, where I lived and worked, was suffering from Zeppelin air raids. I had been one evening to a salvation meeting in a little old hall in a district called Custom House, quite near to the East End docks. There we had a marvellous expression of salvationism. One's heart was warmed and indeed set on fire by the pure salvationism of those East End Salvationists and converts. After this grand meeting, where I had listened to so many testimonies and came away with a heart rejoicing, I mounted a London bus to go to my home. At that time the London buses had an open top deck, and there I sat. And then, dismounting from the bus, I had quite a distance to walk, and while I walked there was a raid carrying on. The Zeppelins were overhead, the shrapnel was falling around me on the pavement and knocking up the sparks, but dodging from door to door, I was still going home with a singing heart. And this song formed itself in my mind on the bus and on the road. I have no claim on grace, I have no right to plead. And the third verse speaks of that doctrine which is the first and foremost embodiment of the army message, where it says, "O pardon speaking blood, O soul renewing grace." And I say to you, if I may, let us not be apologetic about our belief in the precious blood of Christ spilt for us, the blood of Christ as of a lamb without blemish and without spot. We still must say, we have no other argument, we want no other plea. It is enough that Jesus died, and that he died for me. 462 is another one. This was written in Germany, soon after I had been made the general. I saw the desolation of Hamburg and of Berlin, and I felt that there was a wide gulf between my condition and the condition of my officers and comrades in Germany. I had good food and I had good uniforms, and they had otherwise. And it seemed to me that it was impossible for me to minister successfully to them unless I could somehow mingle my life with theirs. Hence the song, "My life must be Christ's broken bread, my love his outpoured wine." This is perhaps the only song in our book which could be called sacramental. And I find that members of the churches understand this and have taken this song, or as they would call it, this hymn, into use in their circles. Now take 473. Ah, well, may I remind you that even officers may lose grace and may actually grieve the Spirit of God, and when he grieves, he leaves. I was a divisional commander in South London in 1922. Everything had been going well. We had staged a great campaign, a soul-saving campaign, and out of it 400 new soldiers had been made. Statistically, everything in our division had run away up off the graph which we kept in our office, and my staff and I were naturally quite pleased. I had been pleased to come to South London from Norfolk. I was only a young man, 33 when I was made a divisional commander, and 36 when I was appointed to that great London division with 58 corps. And then I found, after our first successful year, that National Headquarters were thinking of dividing that division, taking another one out of its loins, making the South West London Division. And I was a little disturbed. I did not like this. My staff did not like it. My friends did not like it. And they told me to protest. I remember the morning that I went out to meet Mrs. Bremel Booth, who was the British Commissioner at the time, and Colonel Rich, who was the Chief Secretary, when they were to conduct an inspection at my divisional headquarters. I said, and I meant it, nothing whatever shall make me protest against an arrangement which is going to turn out for the good of the Salvation Army. Now that was the mood in which I went to that inspection. But something was said that morning which seemed to, as we say, rub me the wrong way. And before I knew what I was doing, I was making the very protest which I had said I never would make. And I lost my experience. Now, please do not argue with me about this. I say that you cannot quarrel with anybody and yet preserve your own peace of mind. I lost my peace of mind, and I went on with my work, I suppose by the natural momentum of my activity in my office. And one day I was running for a London bus and I fell off it and I hurt my leg. I was carried into a nursing home protesting against my will, and there I lay. And one morning I heard officers in an adjoining room singing, "Nothing from thy altar I would keep, to thy cross of suffering I would leap." And I said to myself, yes, there was a time when I would have embraced the cross, whatever it meant, but now I've lost it. And out of that experience came this song, "Saviour, if my feet have faltered on the pathway of the cross." And do you know, I sang that first at an officers' meeting in West Croydon, when one of the officers came to me and said, "I like your song, but please don't say 'pass me through a sterner cleansing.'" I said, "Well, what do you think I should say?" He said, "Say a further cleansing. Sterner is a hard word." And I said to him, "My friend, you can say further if you like, but for me, after what I have been through, it has to be a sterner cleansing." Now I said, let it rest at that. And this song has gone out, and believe me, of all the songs about which I hear from various parts of the world, this more than any other. Why is that? I think it is because it is not an uncommon experience for the feet to falter on the pathway of the cross. But let us remember the chorus. whatever we may fail to do, all my work is for the Master. "478 was written really in answer to a request by Commissioner Hay, and this also has become very useful. It was written in South London in 1923, when in my first year there I saw the barrenness of the situation. I saw churches derelict all along the south side of the Thames, and hundreds of thousands of the very people we were out to save wandering without any connection with churches. And then I wrote that, "Except I am moved with compassion." 531, you must forgive me if I hurry because I haven't a lot of time to give you this commentary. 531, In the Secret of Thy Presence, was the first song I wrote after becoming a divisional commander. This is dated 1920. I did not feel like writing songs. I found myself as a young divisional commander between the hammer and the anvil, the hammer being the headquarters and the anvil being the corps. I never knew where I was going really in my first year, and just in the midst of that a request came for me to write a song for the Officers' Council, and I said, sorry, nothing doing. The song factory is not working. But finally, on the first night of the councils, when I was in my billet, this song came to me, or should I say, not night, but quite early in the morning. And as I sang it over at the piano to my old friend, Lieutenant Colonel Boot, with whom I was staying at the time, he turned round and looked at me and said, Osborn, that song will live. And it was used that same night in an officers' council comprising about 800 people, and as they sang this chorus, In the Secret of Thy Presence, involuntarily, without any suggestion from the platform, they started to rise from their seats until the whole congregation was standing and singing, Let me love thee, let me serve thee, every consecrated hour.
Spring
598 dates back to dear New Zealand, 1935. I was in charge temporarily, awaiting the arrival of a new territorial commander, and as the Chief Secretary I travelled to a few corps. I reached one in the north and went out into the Never Never country and saw a hill from whence waters were flowing, and it was suggested that I should take some of the waters, which were medicinal. People were coming from all parts to collect them, and so I took the waters there. And when I got back to Wellington, I thought of another hill from whence a stream flows for the healing of the nations, and 598 was the outcome of that meditation. When shall I come unto the healing waters? 788 Greater Things, written when I was a captain in 1908. Things had gone very well in the summer at that seaside town. My lieutenant, a Welshman, had sung to very good effect in the open airs on the beach. I remember one Sunday a lady said, "Captain, if your lieutenant will sing again, I will give you £5 in the collection." £5. Those of you who think in dollars or other currency may not understand why £5 ran to the head of a captain in 1908. For believe me, 5 golden sovereigns were enough really to set imagination alight. I turned to the lieutenant, I said, "Sing up, Leffy," and he got out and he sang, and the lady gave us the £5. But the summer went and the winter came, and everything in our corps went down. No visitors, smaller congregations, hard open-air meetings, low income, low salary, until one morning at prayers, the lieutenant, who was a Welsh miner, thumped our kitchen table as though he would break it, and he cried out in prayer, "O God, thou hast promised us greater things. Now, Lord, it's up to you, show them." And I wrote that song afterwards, "Greater things, give me faith, O Lord, I pray." Just one more reference before I finish. That chorus, number 128 at the end of the book, "Let the beauty of Jesus be seen in me," that has travelled far and wide, far outside the Salvation Army. Written to a secular melody, it has passed into the currency of evangelistic singing. It is based really on a sermon I heard from an army officer in 1907. This man preached on the last verse of Psalm 90, "And let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us." I carried that inspiration in my heart for many years, and then produced this New Testament version of that Old Testament prayer, "Let the beauty of Jesus be seen in me." The late Gypsy Smith claimed it and sang it for many years, and when he came to a big meeting in London, he tried to teach it to Salvationists, only to find that they knew it before he did. And afterwards we said to him, "Mr. Gypsy, that's a Salvation Army chorus. It was born with a red band round its hat, I'm not sure that he was too pleased, but still the chorus lives on. Let me finish with this. I've written many songs, especially in later years, which I would rather see in the songbook than some of the numbers that are already there. And one of them is my song written for my Easter meetings at my beloved corps of Boscombe. And I will quote you the first verse. This is an Easter song. O love upon a cross impaled, my contrite heart is drawn to thee. Are thine the hands my pride has nailed, and thine the sorrows borne for me? Are such the wounds my sin decrees? I fall in shame upon my knees. And I shall close this little commentary by saying, upon my knees before the cross is the place where the guilty sinner comes, and it's the place where captains and generals and everybody else must kneel and must stay and must finish their course. God bless you one and all. I hope these few racy comments have been of interest and of help to you.
General Albert Orsborn remains the prince of Salvation Army poets, and in his lifetime wrote many songs which are now in the Salvation Army songbook. A theme to which he often returned was the story of Jesus Christ dying on the cross. As many as 6 of his songs in the songbook are devoted to that theme. One of them is today's song, O Love, Impaled on a Cross. In this deeply devotional song, Albert Orsborn speaks directly to Jesus and calls him, O love, upon a cross impaled, my contrite heart is drawn to thee. We hear echoes from the Calvary scene when he writes, Forgive, forgive, I hear thee plead. And his own personal plea follows, and me forgive, I instant cry. Drawing on the picture in Hebrews 13:8 of the risen Christ living to intercede for us, he continues, For me thy wounds shall intercede, for me thy prayer shall make reply. I take the grace that flows from these in saving faith upon my knees. Jesus once said about the manner of his death, When I am lifted up from earth, I will draw all people to myself. Through this song, we too are drawn nearer to Jesus on the cross.